So it is that time of the afternoon on a Tuesday that we bring you the property perspective with Etchells and Young, and joining us in the studio once again, we say a very good afternoon to you, Harry. Lucky to have you in the studio.
Thanks, Al. Hi, yeah, great to be here as always.
And I see a very interesting topic for the week. We're talking buying options, whether it be freehold or sectional titles, HOA as in estates, if that's a good idea, off-plan from developers versus existing houses. Geez, wow. We're quite a broad spectrum this week, I think.
Yeah, I think nice just to unpack some of the pros and cons that go with all of these different things. I mean, there's a wide choice and a wide array of options out there for prospective buyers. So, yeah, it'll be nice to unpack them.
Yeah, and I would imagine we're going to touch on costs and what is best, whether it's you buying somebody's house that they had thought of and built many years ago that might just fit your family quite fine, or do you go through the headache, and I have once in my life, and I promised myself I'll never do it again, and that is build your house from scratch.
So exactly. So even with your experience, you know there's stuff that works and stuff that doesn't work. But for sure, cost is a big factor, but it's not the only one. There are quite a few other things to take into account as well.
Yeah, and then of course you budget when building a house, and I've kind of realized that you should just put 50% aside, because you're probably going to 50% over and
Extra,
above.
50%
yes, aside, because you're going to probably need that in the long run. But let's chat about a freehold home. Now I get confused when you say freehold, freestanding. Now a freehold home is typically a house in the suburbs, right?
Yeah, so that's going to be your standalone. You're buying the land, and there's an improvement on the land called a house or a home. So freehold means it's not sectional title, and it's yours. The house and the land, everything on it belongs to the registered owner. So whether it's called freehold or full title or freestanding, it pretty much all means the same thing.
Okay. So what are the key differences then when it comes to estates? Where does the freestanding come in?
Okay. So the freestanding, as I mentioned, is typically when the house is not part of a sectional title complex, or a complex where you're sharing a wall with a neighbor.
Would that even include my garage, for argument's sake? If my garage wall is attached to somebody else's house.
So it could. Sometimes that is exactly where you'll have the homes that are attached and the garages too. Yeah. So the garage is going to share a wall with someone else. And generally speaking, it's going to be in a sectional title complex. But just remember, within an estate is not necessarily only sectional title. And you can have a sectional title that's freestanding.
Okay.
It's mainly in KZN that they do that, but there are estates that are sectional title, but you've got your own plot of land and you have your own home, but it's still sectionalized, and you're part of that section and part of that body corporate.
Of course.
A sectional title has got a body corporate, but within a bigger estate where you have freestanding and freehold homes, normally smaller stands, but the stand belongs to you and so does the home, and then those estates will normally be governed by a homeowners association, and not a body corporate that's linked to a sectional title.
Okay, that makes a whole lot of sense.
But it's still within an estate, and let's call it community living.
Okay.
Whereas the freehold that I'm referring to is really the house in the suburbs.
Now I would imagine, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, when it comes to if you've got a house in a complex, for argument's sake, and you belong to a body corporate, that would make, even though you're on a property and maybe you aren't, your property isn't touching anybody else's property, in other words, it's freestanding, I would imagine your property with where your property or where your building is on top of is that part of the body corporate, and would that be like what do they call it?
Common property.
Common property, yes.
So typically a body corporate, as I said, that is linked to a sectional title scheme, and that means that all the common property, including the outside of the walls and the roofs usually, are controlled by the body corporate.
Okay.
And as the owner of that property, whether you're renting it out or not, you belong to that body corporate, and you pay your levies that covers things like security, covers maintenance, gardens and other shared or common property stuff. Within a sectional title, you can have an exclusive use area, which could be your garden, or could be, if you're on the ground floor, or your parking area, your parking bay or parking bays. That's exclusive use. It doesn't belong to you as the owner of that section, but you and only you get to use it.
Okay.
So that is one of the main differences, exactly as we've said there now, is that within a sectional title, the property is managed for you by the body corporate and their managing agent, and owners become trustees and they manage that, and you can choose to be part of that or not. Where a freehold home in the suburbs, you're on your own. It's all yours, but you're not restricted by the rules and the governing body of the body corporate.
Let me throw a spanner in the works, because I've seen this. If you are one of those homes in the suburbs and you decide to become a gated community, and rules all of a sudden do apply.
Yes, but then again, everybody in that street or that section is going to need to agree, and they're going to need to form a committee of some sort to and understand what the rules are. And that might now once again be something like a homeowners association. But there's a lot of bylaws and city restrictions that you then need to comply with. And all those gated communities, even though your street might be gated off, it's got to be open, and the gates must be unlocked and open between usually 3 and 6 or 6:30 in the evening to allow people in and out. But that's slightly different and probably not what I wanted to really focus on now. But it's
like
one
I said, I'm throwing the spanner in the works this afternoon.
There we are.
But
we had to have a chat around the topic, no problem.
But let's get back onto course then, and tell me of those examples that you gave me. Firstly, who would be attracted to each type, and secondly, what would the cost difference or implications be as far as the whole lot is concerned?
And I think all of these decisions about where you buy, are you buying in a suburb, are you buying in a sectional title, are you buying in a flats on the 3rd floor, or are you buying in a gated community that is freehold and full title, is going to depend on where you're at. Generally speaking, we do find that younger people will opt for the body corporate schemes, the complexes, the apartment blocks, because your affordability, your point of entry there is generally quite a lot lower than your well-established suburbs. In sought after areas close to good schools, etc., etc. So generally, your younger professionals are buying those type of properties. Not buying a 4,000 square meter stand and a 6-bedroom home. Generally, that's more your families who have kids, who have pets. They want their own spaces. They don't want to be dictated to by a body corporate about where they can hang their laundry and where they can park and where their guests can park, because obviously all of those type of rules is what a body corporate will enforce and then issue fines when you overstep the mark.
Yeah.
And another big plus for the suburbs is, as your family grows, and if you want to renovate and you want to add another room, but obviously you need to get the correct building plans and permissions, but then you can do that, and you can adapt and modify that home a lot easier than what you potentially can adapt and modify a sectional title home. It's not impossible for sectional title. If the scheme allows it, you can do it. But you're obviously adapting, and you're making that freestanding home your own, specifically to your needs.
Indeed. And let's talk about maintenance and renovations and changes. You kind of brushed on it for a second over there. Would I be right by saying a freehold home is one of those that you have total carte blanche when it comes to sectional titles or what do you call
Body
it?
corporate
type places. That becomes a little bit more difficult when it comes to renovations and changes, etc. Right?
As I said, you have to abide by the rules of that particular scheme, and each scheme has their own rules. Some of them may be similar and overlapping, but if you're in a small 2-bedroom flat, it's highly unlikely that they're going to allow you to convert the one bedroom into two smaller bedrooms.
Yeah.
Number one, there's probably not going to be the space. And that's probably one of the downsides of sectional titles, and the modern building style is getting smaller and smaller.
Yeah.
Whereas on your own freeholding property, you are the property owner, and provided you comply
Follow the
with
rules.
the sort of bylaws and getting the permissions to do the alterations, you can do whatever alterations you can. And on that as well, that's one of the benefits of a home in the suburbs, is as your family and your lifestyle changes, you don't need to sell up and go and buy and then incur all the costs and expenses. These bloody estate agents charge commission for what they do as well. You've got to pay them their commission, plus you've got to buy another place and pay transfer duties and fees. You can just modify that home to suit your growing family's needs, just as an example.
Now you've just touched on something that I wanted to ask you about now in our next conversation, and that is off-plan or already newly built developments that you can go and have a look at. What is the best? Do you go for an existing home, or do you go and buy something off-plan, which is going to take maybe 6 or 7 months before you move in? Or do you go and buy from a developer that's just built a complex and they're opening it up for, maybe they've got 1 or 2 units left before they open up for people to come in and start occupying?
So I mean, that is a great choice. And again, it comes down largely to your personal circumstances and preferences. But a lot of people do want to buy a brand new property and have their own place. Again, it's usually also, starter couples, families just got married, and now we're buying our first place. Then a great place to go to is to a developer and to buy probably an existing or currently being built property. But it can also be completely off-plan. And one of the developments of off-plan is you're buying today, and if it's a good estate, as that estate grows, and might take you a year sometimes before you can move in.
Yeah.
You actually haven't started paying for that bond yet until it's transferred, but you've bought it, you've signed the contract today. That means you've got a year's worth of growth. If there's been growth in the property market, that's to your advantage.
And you also normally get it at a very good price, don't you?
You can get it at a good price because the costs are included usually. The developers do deals with attorneys, the conveyancers, like Louise, who was here last week. They will do a deal, and they'll really squeeze them to give them a good price. And then they'll include all of those costs in the price that you pay. And also, if you're buying from a developer, generally speaking, developers are VAT vendors, so VAT's included in the price. So that means you're either going to pay VAT or transfer duty. Remember, I think the threshold of the transfer duty is now 1.3 million. So assuming this is more than 1.3 million, you would then save on the transfer duty and only pay the VAT. That's actually excluded in the price. So you pay one price. That's all of your fees, your transfer duties included, which is one of the big plus points for buying from a developer or buying a brand new property.
If I buy a place off plan and I decide maybe 8 months into waiting for this property to be completed, and I see that there's still another 6 months ahead of me before I get to move into this house, can I sell it?
You definitely can sell it.
Can I make a profit?
You can make a profit, and I mean there were many people that made quite a lot of money doing this, probably in the 2007 and 2006s when property was really flying up in Joburg. It's probably less so now, but absolutely you can sell it, and you would normally do a back-to-back agreement with your sale. Obviously would not charge the VAT because now it's a direct sale. So when this property transfers, it will transfer in one tranche from the developer to you and immediately from you to the guy that you sold it to.
Okay.
So it can be done, no problem at all. And you can potentially make some bucks out of it without even ever actually taking possession or ownership of that property.
Well, let's talk about that. Let's talk about transfer costs versus VAT and where those extra costs can come in that we are not sure of when buying, whether it be an off-plan property, a new property from a developer, or an existing home.
Okay, so we've kind of covered now. Earlier I spoke about what's included with the developer.
Yeah.
So when you're buying a freehold property, a house in the suburbs, generally speaking, that's quite a bit more expensive, and therefore you're going to be paying the transfer duty, unless in the unlikely event that the seller is a VAT vendor, which means you're going to pay VAT. But let's, for the purposes of this discussion, assume it's a normal guy who's lived there for a couple of years. Now he's moving out. So you're buying it from a seller who's not a VAT vendor. In other words, you pay the transfer duties. And that can become quite a lot of money when the value of the property, 4 or 5 million rand, you're going to pay a couple of 100,000 rands worth of transfer duty. You're also paying the attorney's costs. And even though the seller nominates that attorney, you got to pay the costs. So all of those things can add up, and obviously then potentially there is going to be you're buying this property foot to it, means as is, whatever needs to be fixed, you need to fix. If there's maintenance that needs to happen, you need to do that maintenance. So there are potentially more costs, and more direct costs and more maintenance costs, specifically buying a freehold house than a brand new sectional title. If it's a brand new property that you bought from the developer, normally the NHBRC is going to give you a guarantee. If anything goes wrong, you should be registered with them and make sure that your developer is registered with the NHBRC. And it's a new property, so the chances are that there's going to be immediate issues and problems and stuff breaking is hopefully less.
Yeah. And I would imagine moving into a new estate, for argument's sake. I've found a property, the developer's built my house, and I'm lucky I'm the very first oak to move into my house. What about all the noise and the construction that goes with it?
That's unfortunately,
and the dust and everything else that goes with it.
That's the downside of that, is that you're going to have to put up with a lot of construction noise, the dust while the property settles in, and normally takes a while for it to bed in properly. But if you've bought in the right estate and it's sought after, and let's say 2 years go by and this thing has really grown nicely in value, that's where and you want to now sell and move somewhere else potentially, that's where you're going to reap some of the benefits of having grinded out through that initial phase.
Yeah. I actually moved into a place that was complete, and they started breaking ground right next door, and I happened to be on the boundary wall. So I know exactly how that feels. So that was many years ago.
Yeah, that's, as I said, potentially the downside. But, hopefully all of this has shown is that there's pros and cons, there's upsides and there's downsides. And largely, this is going to depend on what your requirements are, what stage of life you're in. If you've got a couple of pets, a couple of dogs, 3-4 dogs, Labradors, it's unlikely they're gonna fare well in a sectional title property or within the state. But if you have your own, 1,000, 2,000 square meter stand, beautiful place for the dogs to run around and have a ball.
Sounds fantastic. Listen, I think we've kind of completed buying a home, whether new, whether it's still in the construction phase, or whether it's brand, or whether it's old for that matter, in the suburbs this afternoon. And if you wanted to ask a question, you're more than welcome. 084 2212 919. But what I want to do now, Harry, is chat with Maria Waite, because she has got our property of the week. So a very good afternoon to you, and how are you, Maria?
Hi, Al. I'm doing well, thank you.
Fantastic. Something that we always look forward to on a Tuesday is the property of the week. What have you got for us?
Well, I've got a lovely opportunity here for someone to buy a freehold property. I'm very excited to tell you about it. It is situated in the heart of Douglasdale, and it was just listed today. And we're already receiving inquiries. I'm happy with the interest it is getting. It's a 3-bedroom cluster, freehold with 2 bathrooms, which means it's a freehold, means it's a full title. It's also pet friendly, and it gives you the opportunity, being freehold, it gives you an excellent opportunity to add your personal touch to create a truly special living space.
And that's exactly what we've been chatting about today, Harry and I.
Yeah, perfect.
So that's fantastic.
All right. It's the earth size is 504 square meters, and it's got a wraparound garden and a double garage, lock-up garage. So it's very spacious. The property is very spacious. It faces north. The seller is serious to sell, and at 2.6 million, we don't expect the property to be on the market for much longer.
Especially not in Douglasdale. Not at that
Not
price.
in Douglasdale. close to schools, close to everything. The estate itself is lovely. It's got a big park in the center. It's where families still walk around. They don't have high walls or anything. It's a very relaxed environment to raise a family. It's got a large park play area for children and a very nice area for outdoor activities for families.
Very nice. Now, if people want to get hold of you, Maria, and want to view this, or if they want to quickly have a squiz to see what this property looks like, how do they do that?
They can give me a call on my cell phone number. It is 083 364 8774, or pop me an email at Maria, spelled Maria, at etchelsandyoung.co.za.
And that and is AND, by the way.
AND, yes,
yeah,
yes.
So that people don't just put an and sign.
Right.
Maria, thank you very much for bringing us this property of the week. Can we see it on your website? Is it up already?
It is on the website. Yes, it went live today.
Okay, and that is etchelsandyoung.co.za, right?
Correct.
Fantastic.
Correct.
Fantastic. Maria, thank you for bringing us our property of the week, and we'll chat again soon.
Okay, thank you for the opportunity.
Only a pleasure. Cheers now.
Bye-bye. Bye.
All right, Harry, I think we have concluded our week's property chat. We now know a hell of a lot more about all kinds of property, which is lekker, so thank you for bringing that to us. And we've got our property of the week,
Absolutely.
which is fantastic.
Thanks, Al. You're really most welcome, and you're quite fortuitous that Maria happened to mention that it's a freehold property inside a gated community. So there you go, one of the options we spoke about.
Indeed, and that's exactly what I said to her. I said we had had a chat about exactly that, which is fantastic. Anyway, Harry, I'm sure we'll chat again next week.
Thank you. Yes.
Until then, you have a fantastic week.
Awesome. You too.
Lovely. Let's go back to the music this afternoon. Yes, Toto, and hold the line.